Symantec, and she's going to be talking to us about OST integration. And as we go through these, kind of the way we've been doing this today is if you've got questions, ask as we go along, and we'll take them as they come. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Heidi.
Great, thank you. So these are the last few diehards that are still here last session after 2 days, so thank you for staying. I appreciate that. Again, my name's Hai, and I work for Symantec. I'm the product manager for Net Backup for our open storage program. And open storage is not in the same sense of how this summit is referring to open storage. It's not an open source environment, but it is our way of integrating and creating an ecosystem for partners to integrate with Net Backup. So I'm just going to cover a little bit of an overview of what our open storage, our definition of open storage is, kind of the features and benefits of the program, and then our integration with Nexenta. So open storage to us is really a layer that we developed a couple years ago that opens Net Backup through an open storage layer. We've created some APIs that allow partners to integrate with Net Backup seamlessly. They build a plugin that sits in the Net Backup library, and it runs upon runtime for Net Backup. And it enables any storage, and typically it's been storage appliances, and Nexenta will be actually the second platform that's just a software layer managing the storage on the back end. So from a Net Backup standpoint, this is our typical architecture. We've got I don't have the master server on here, but we've got the master server that keeps track of all the catalog information, the clients, and then the media server. And the media server is kind of our workhorse that does all initiates the backup jobs, runs the backup jobs. It's really the one that does all the work in our Net Backup environment. And the open storage APIs sit on the Net Backup media server. So what Nexenta has done is they built a plugin that gets installed on our media server, and it talks to whatever storage you have on the back end. So again, we created the program because we found that customers really have an attachment to a particular hardware infrastructure that they purchase, or they want to be able to select whatever hardware they want to have on the back end. And this really ties well into what Nexenta does. It's really, like I said, it's creating an ecosystem for partners to integrate with Net Backup. So the value proposition of this program really follows our core value proposition, and that is supporting broad platform support for operating systems, for applications, and storage on the back end, whether that storage is on tape, VTL, disk, appliances, cloud, whatever it is, we want to be able to support those storage targets. So why would partners go through the development efforts like Nexenta is going through to develop the plugin into Net Backup? Primarily, they look at it from we have the integration for both Net Backup and our other product, Backup Exec, and between the two, we have about 40% of the market in enterprise backup software. So that integration point really helps the partner drive additional revenues for that segment that uses Symantec. We're looking at storage appliances today that support our platform. You can see Nexenta is pretty close to having a beta ready. And then Falcon Store is the only other software partner we have today. Everyone else is kind of a hardware back end as a storage target. And when you look at the IDC revenue, this is based on revenue market share that they did last year. And they're forecasting that this year, in 2011, it's about a $1.7 billion market for appliances built just for backup targets. And then that revenue is projected to be about $2.2 billion next year. And you can see, if you look on the bottom there, the primary ones with market share, EMC, IBM, HP, Cepaton, Dell, all of those partners down there have some sort of OST integration, with the exception of Oracle in there. And then Nexenta will be giving you an option to some of these appliances today. And really, these appliances aren't cheap. When you look at EMC and the data domain platforms, they're on the high end of the market, and having that OST integration with Nexenta, being able to use any type of commodity storage on the back end is really going to help drive costs down for our customers. So So kind of just a quick overview of the features. This is the key feature that all of the partners have developed to, and that's the optimized duplication feature. And primarily what it does, it allows the customer to have multiple copies of their data and have the storage server perform primary tasks like deduplication and replication, and really have net backup just manage the data sets. So in this case, you can see that, customers, if they wanted to have multiple copies of their data, so they've got a primary copy locally to improve, get quick RTO, RPO. They want a secondary copy off-site, so they're going to replicate it off-site, and then at the off-site location, they might move that to tape and store that for longer term. Prior to having this integration with our partners, the customer would either have to write the data twice, so they'd send the data to the media server and to the first storage target, and then write it again, or they would have to send the data back through and read it through the media server and have it write to a secondary target. So that's a lot of load on that media server. So with our optimized duplication functionality, we, as net backup, we tell the storage server, okay, we want you to make a duplication. And we put it up to the storage server to perform that replication to the secondary site. And then when it sends us the confirmation, we track that in the catalog. So to net backup, it appears as two separate data sets, one with maybe a retention of 30 days and the other one with a retention of 12 months. But they're separate within the net backup catalog. So prior to having this, if customers did the replication, when you replicate, generally it's seen as, you have the same expiration date. When you delete one side, the other side gets deleted. And really with optimized duplication, you're now able to break that replication into two separate data sets within that backup. This one isn't automated. So the other features that we're looking at future development on is direct to tape. So again, customers who want to do the replication locally, replicate off-site, and then move a third copy to tape for longer-term retention. Those customers, prior to having this functionality, they'd have to read the data all back through the media server and then write it to tape. With this solution, developing, again, having the storage server support this solution, the customer can write that data directly from their disk target, write it directly to tape. There's an NDMP server in there, but then net backup is aware of the tape format. It's aware of a different retention expiration date for that tape format, and the customer reduces the load on their network and their media server with this functionality. Another feature that we're looking at developing in the future with Nexenta is optimized synthetics. So with this, what customers are doing is, again, when you're doing a full backup, customers' data is growing. You look at all the information you've heard in the other keynotes, there's a huge growth of data, and the backup window just can't support doing full backups every week. So with optimized synthetics, what customers can do is they can do that initial full backup, and then do really perpetual incremental backups after that, and only take in the change data. But the problem with the original, we could always do synthetic backups in terms of, again, having the media server read in the last full, all the incrementals, and then write a synthetic full backup down to disk. But with the optimized synthetic solution, the media server doesn't have to do that work anymore. The storage server, net backup is telling the storage server, hey, this full backup is comprised of this full plus all of these incrementals, and the storage server is creating the pointer maps to tell what the full looks like, and to the net backup catalog, it appears as a complete full. So the real benefit to this is when you're doing a restore. If you're doing a typical restore where you're doing a full backup and incrementals, you have to do that full, you have to restore that full, and then all the incrementals after that. With an optimized synthetic, you're telling the storage server, I need a backup from this date. Here's all and then the storage, and here's all the data I need. The storage server knows where all those pointers are. They can recover that data set from whatever data the customer needs without having to do that incremental recovery from full, incremental, etc. So the latest feature we came out with is automatic image replication. So we have customers that have multiple net backup domains, and with this option, what the storage server is doing is it's moving. Before, when you're doing a recovery, a disaster recovery scenario, you'd have your, if you're doing the optimized duplication, you're moving that, replicating that data set to a secondary site. But if you actually had a disaster, you actually have to import all that, the entire image into the catalog, for the catalog to index all of those images before you can actually start your recovery. With auto image replication, what we're doing is we're telling the storage server, hey, I have that data set to replicate, and I want you to import it into the secondary domain. So that master server at the secondary domain is importing all that metadata whenever that occurs. And so when you have a disaster, you can immediately start your recovery. You no longer have to import all the images before you start that recovery. So some of the value that we're seeing from our integration with Nexenta is, NetBackup supports any storage integration, including open source. And they'll be our first open source solution. And the ability for them to use commodity storage on the back end is going to really provide a cost-effective solution for customers. If you look again, think back to that purpose-built appliance market share, those are pretty expensive disks of the existing providers out there today. So by having the integration with Nexenta, we can utilize all the features that we have within the open storage program and really have reduce your costs on the back end using that cheaper commoditized disk. The solution is qualified by NetBackup, so like any other open storage solution that we have a testing lab, and when the provider gives us that plugin, we actually do a soak test on it. There's a 6-week testing that Symantec does on those plugins, and then once those plugins are qualified, we're listed on our HCL. And if you look at a lot of customers that are using NetBackup today, they go to the HCL and they make sure that that solution is listed in a supported platform before they'll purchase it. So having Nexenta on our HCL is going to give that customer confidence that they can use that solution, that open source solution, and when they have a trouble with their backups and they can't get a recovery, they call Symantec first. We usually take first line of support, and we'll help the customer troubleshoot their backup and their restore or whatever issues they might be having. But really having it on our HCL means that you're going to get support from Symantec. Now I went through this really quick because I don't know how many, there's only a few of you in here. Is anybody a NetBackup customer today? Well, there's one back there. Are you using any, what are you using on your back end for storage target?
Quantum, 8.
Pardon me?
Right now we're going basically this staging to an 8-inch LTO 3 now, hang up to LTO 5.
Okay. Are you looking at moving to disk at all, to disk?
Yeah.
Okay. So this would be a great option for you to take a look at, is using the Nexenta integration.
Anybody using Nexenta? So, yeah.
The question I have is if I'm planning to developer, what value addition I do want, because it looks like your back is going all the logistics and everything. Being a plugin developer, am I just a data mover?
Yeah, so if you're, in terms of you're just developing plugins, we have a lot of, there'll be opportunities for you. Right now, one of the areas that we're trying to figure out is in some of the other keynotes about object storage. Everybody's talking about object storage, and they want to be able to figure out how to get that NetBackup data set into an object storage platform. So that's one area that we haven't figured out. But from a developer standpoint, really we expose a set of APIs that says, here's how you talk to NetBackup. And when we do our testing, we're looking at, we're going to hand you off some blobs of data, and whatever you do with it, we don't really know. It's transparent to us. How you replicate, if you deduplicate, if you provide encryption, whatever functionality you have, it's transparent to us. And what we're looking for is when we ask for that data back, you need to give that data back in the format that we provided. Brad, did you want to?
Yeah, so I mean, what we're really Exenastore side here, is that we're finding ourselves more and more involved in enterprise deployments and more and more being asked to integrate with enterprise applications. And what we found is the Symantec OST APIs is very similar in concept. If you're at all familiar with VMware, what they've recognized over time is that storage-related activities are sometimes best done by the storage system, and so they have a set of APIs that they call VAAI, where they actually, instead of doing things in the hypervisor, they push it down to the storage system. Hey, you zero out the blocks, you move things around, right? And I see Symantec's OST APIs as basically the same thing. Why do things up in the media server and actually read data up, pass it to another media server, only to then get written to another storage system? Well, you can just have the two storage systems talk directly, right? And again, when we did VAI and released that, immediately we saw customers getting 300% performance improvements because of eliminating the middleman kind of thing. And I'm here to announce that if you want to be in a beta program of OST integration with Exenastore, we're at that point now. But even in our own testing, we immediately saw a 3 to 4x performance benefit as well. So again, if you can push some of the work down to the storage system instead of having to, you can just imagine, right? Why read a backup image into the media server only to then write it out? Why not just let the storage system that you hope is good at replication and things like that just handle it directly? So that's what's exciting to me. And of course, including I included it under the open storage umbrella because again, you're as a open source or as a kind of a smaller player, say in the storage community, to being able to have APIs like this to tie into a more sophisticated enterprise backup system, great. Just gives the customer many more options in terms of how they mix and match, components in order to drive down their costs, which I think is kind of the name of the game here with open storage. Glad I could come out and talk about that.
Well, as we start to look at, especially customers who are deploying cloud, and they're using Exenta as their platform to deploy their cloud solutions, having that integration with Net Backup is going to give the customer a mechanism to protect that cloud environment that they're using.
In this picture, you showed the media server and something. It's a standard server, it's not an extension box.
Right, it's a standard server that the customer would, that we support a variety of operating systems on it, Linux, Windows, and then the customer would deploy that in their environment.
So, if they have multiple projects like that in the backend, they have policy or something for policy.
You have multiple plugins.
Yeah, like different sort of backend.
So kind of the concept is sort of, you have a one-to-one mapping between a type of storage system and a plugin. Okay, so in fact, there's an Exenastore plugin, right?
That's true.
And then you might deploy it on multiple media servers, and each media server then controls maybe a set of storage systems.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so Symantec is somewhat agnostic, right? They're saying use our APIs. You can have a plugin for each of those storage system types. Now, to your point, if this is where you're heading, if you had like different policies or classes of storage, all that can be managed in the Symantec interface themselves. If you want to say, I want to store my primary backup copy on an Exenta, but my less important one on something else, then you have that option.
Yeah, so what happens is if you have multiple plugins, we would qualify those plugins, and we have within Net Backup, we know that plugin is a valid plugin that works with Net Backup, so it does a check, and so there's a namespace that Exenta has used for their plugin, and we're checking, okay, is that plugin a valid namespace for a storage target?
Question on optimized synthetic backup synthesis. Optimized backup synthesis. So as I understand, the synthesis of backup, incremental backups will be delegated to a hardware which is sitting beyond media server. But the image format is very proprietary to Symantec. So how the hardware in the backend would be able to do a synthesis of incremental data pool?
So that is part of our API specifications. we tell the provider, here's how we're going to give you the image. And basically we have it's an include image call that we make out to the storage server. And the storage server has implemented that call to say that when there's a new data set associated with this, I do include image, include image, include image, and they point to those blocks of data that we're giving them. Any other questions? There is an OST open storage, but it's very basic. I can give you my business card, give you more information.
I mean, you might want to just introduce the STEP program, because you don't generally give out, the APIs are part of being in the technology enablement program. So you join the program, they have a whole, they'll give you training out of their site, as well as access to the SDK.
About the image replication, you said in the slide that if the hardware is configured so that it can replicate from site 1 to site 2, then we can leverage one net backup on the site 2. So, but there would be a metadata of OST plugin, like let's say given image sits where on the hardware, that map would be with OST plugin. So even that needs to be replicated. So is that a responsibility of OST plugin vendor or vendor?
I'm sorry, the voice next door is really loud. I didn't catch your whole message or question.
So hardware replication will replicate image data across the site, but there is a metadata associated with that image. Let's say image 2.image file is sitting at this location on the hardware. Now that metadata along with the actual image data needs to be replicated to leverage images on the other side. Right? So how that will be achieved? Is that whose responsibility is? Is it the OST plugin needs to take care, or NetBackup has some provisions?
You know what?
It's all part of the same API set. So basically, imagine an API set that includes both, hey, you need to replicate that to the remote site, as well as, hey, you need to alert the media server on the receiving side that there's been changes. So it's all built into that API set that the plugin, as part of moving the data, is also going to be alerting. So in that sense, it's a burden. You can call it a burden on the plugin. It's really a burden on the plugin implementing all the APIs that make up the there. Because it's not just moving the data, it's alerting the receiving side that it's coming. And that's what's going to cause you to hit the meta.
So that's about the image data, but there should be some metadata associated with it. Because there will be
The image data itself is storage system to storage system. The alerting is allowing them to update the metadata side as well, the catalog.
Oh, so there will be additional alerting at the image level?
Yeah, they have like they call it message queuing or something like that. There's a way that they're expecting to be notified of these changes as well.
Yeah, one thing I see is like when you roll out upgrades to your NetBack, obviously all the plugins have to keep up with that thing. So as a maintenance thing, as a customer who's using this platform, obviously like I have a plugin from maintenance or one or something. If I'm using that, and you roll out the changes to make it's up to you whether the changes must be updated.
Right, so they're backwards compatible. So let's say you're on the current version of NetBackup 7.1 today, and when we release 7.5 in next March, if you have that Nexenta plugin, it will work when you upgrade to 7.5. Now, if we release new features, new open storage features in that release, you would have to upgrade, the plugin would have to support that new feature in order for you to use that functionality. So you would have to upgrade the plugin if it's taking advantage. If they've developed integration with new features, the 7.5, then you would have to upgrade that plugin to support that. But otherwise, the plugins we're always backwards compatible.
I read somewhere on the internet saying OST will come up with new feature called client direct, where client will write the image data directly on the allocated hardware, allocated disk, where the allocation and all will be done by media server. But instead of routing the data to media server, client will directly write to the hardware.
So that functionality is within just Net Backup today, within Net Backup. So Net Backup also has an appliance solution where the end user can write directly from the client using client-side deduplication directly to a Net Backup appliance. That's not available for partners to develop to, that functionality. It's anything on the client is strictly staying within Net Backup. So all the partners integration is done with a plugin at the media server.
So that's not going to be available in future release for OST?
Right. I'm curious where you read that on the internet, though.
So the media server has some kind of redundancy, like connections to the backup or something, like can you go to something?
It depends on how the customer has it configured.
Okay.
They can cluster their media servers for